with all of that said, Mr. Chapman, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's very nice to be back. We're busy, just as you say we are.
I know you are. You're like a one-legged paper hanger with one arm on two bodies. So anyway,
one arm and two bodies. All right, that's a kind of a
one
stretch,
arm. Your left arm and Judy's right arm.
Oh, I don't know. That would be rather strange, wouldn't it?
Be strange, but y'all, that's how y'all work. Y'all are always working. Thomas Jefferson once wrote, my reading of history convinces me that the most bad government results from too much government, and that democracy will cease to exist when you take away from those who are willing to work and give it to those who are willing to not. Thomas Jefferson said those words, Mr. Chapman, and I know you agree with them, because the Republicans out there have been trying to save our money and help us all out, and here you are advising people about the Pelosi sanctions, the dollar dangers, and what about the debt-driven collapse that's coming about, Mr. Chapman? Can you give us any information on that that's forthcoming?
Sure. Well, first of all, the transfer of power into this new Medical Reform Act is enormous. The main reason for the act is to be able to control people through medicine. And if government is controlling medicine, they can decide what treatments people get or don't get, and those decisions are going to be made by a bureaucrat. And it's not the doctor that makes the decision anymore, it's some bureaucrat. And of course, if you have a chronic disease, they'll try to convince you, at the beginning at least, to end your life because it costs the government too much money for you to be around. And with older people, they'll do the same thing if they're sick, because they know about 80% of all of the cost of medicine in a person's life occurs in the last year and a half of their existence upon Earth. And so they want to expedite these people out. So it's a culling process. Another thing about the Medical Act is that it's really a subsidization by younger people to fund older people and to fund, in part, people who don't have insurance. Millions of people are going to be laid off after the first of the year when these companies are going to have to supply mandatory insurance for the people who work for them. And these are the people who create 80% of the jobs in the country. And so if they're not in business, they can't create any jobs. And so I think that's going to hurt unemployment very, very badly after the first of the year. I've already talked to people who are ready to start wrapping it up, and they're going to shut their businesses down and lay off hundreds of people. They're just not going to take it. And so it's the typical Marxist legislation by a bunch of Marxists, run and led by a Marxist. Americans want to change, they got it. And so that'll be another leg of the ability of government to tear down people's input and control of their own destiny. As far as the situation with Europe and Greece in particular, everybody who has been close to what's going on in Europe knew a dozen years ago that Greece and Italy both produce bogus balance sheets created in part by Goldman Sachs in order to qualify for the Eurozone. There's 14 countries originally in the Eurozone. There's now 16. And there's 27 countries in the European Union, which is different. But it's some of the same countries. So if you want to understand the Eurozone, it's only a part, or say 5/8 or a little bit more than half of the membership. Now, all of a sudden, Greece has got a problem. Greece has had a problem for a long time. And I think that this is being, or has been deliberately brought up over the last 2 months to be able to create an incident which I think is going to be covered up for the time being by the IMF, which will lend them money and present them with an austerity program far more austere than what the other members of the Eurozone wanted to implement. Germany is the guiding force in the Eurozone as well as in Europe. And their GDP makes up about 45% of the Eurozone GDP. And they've been carrying everybody for years. In fact, many countries are mad at them because they don't buy enough things. They don't get themselves in debt. They don't squander their money. And other people get upset with that. Well, it's just too bad. But anyway, Germany gets stuck with the bailout of what used to be East Germany. And it was a terrible price to pay. I mean, they traded the East German mark for the West German mark 1 for 1, and it should have been 10 for 1. 10 East German marks for 1 West German. But those are conditions that were forced upon them by the U.S. and France. I think that the whole concept, and I think we're starting to see this, and I've talked about it extensively before, and I saw Ambrose Pritchard in the Financial Times, the Telegraph, in London, express the same thing. It's an anthropological nightmare. And I've been talking about this for years because I lived in Europe and I speak several languages. And I lived in Europe a long time. And even countries are made up of different tribes. You know, you may not look at it that way. But let's take Germany. You go into North Central and Central Germany and they speak Plattdeutsch. And some people speak Hochdeutsch, but very few. In Schwaben, which is Stuttgart, they speak Schwabisch. Much different than Plattdeutsch. You go over to Munich and they speak Bayerisch. Now, why do they do that? Because it's from different tribes, that's why. I mean, this goes back thousands of years. And these are hard dialects to learn, incidentally. And they're not easy. And you've got to live there and pick it up. And incidentally, in Switzerland, in the area of Zurich, they call it Zurichdeutsch. And I think that's the worst one of all. I lived in Zurich as well. But anyway, I never even attempted to learn them because, you know, it was hard enough for me to learn German in the first place. But anyway, this is an unnatural conglomeration of people. So what am I getting at here? What they're going to do is this. IMF's going to come in. They're going to give them money in Greece. They're going to give them rules so bad that they'll have a revolution in the country. Sometime next year, there's going to be a big meeting. There's 19 countries that are already bankrupt, including the United States and Great Britain. And there'll be more over the next year. So they'll probably have 50 countries, maybe 30, 40, who knows, who are bankrupt. And so what they'll do, they'll have this meeting and they will devalue all currencies and they will default on debt. And that's what they're going to do. And this is just the leading step in that direction. And the Germans know it. Believe me. The French know it too. Now, the Germans really didn't want to go into the European Union. nor did they want to go into the Eurozone. It was shoved down their throat, just like the bailout of Eastern Germany when they took the wall down. I mean, it cost hundreds of billions of dollars to put Germany back together again. But be as it may, that's the way that whole thing is headed. And that's where we're headed. And in the meantime, we're going to have hyperinflation throughout the world, probably starting later this year. We have inflation now, but not to that extent. It will come. And it'll abruptly stop once they have this meeting, because the meeting's going to be deflationary, not inflationary.